I would like to extend a hearty welcome to each of you. I am Sally Durstein. I lead the team at the Family Business Center, and I'd like to begin by inviting my team to stand so I could introduce them to you. So stand on up. We have Jen Huntsberger, Henry Landis, who's our founder, Dave Griffith, Matt Sullivan, Ron Wurz, Joyce Sawatsky, Shari Bongiovanni, Brenda Bishop, and Anna Walters. So thank you all for being here. This is a phenomenal team. And I'd like to say that I really enjoyed last week. A few of us went to New York City for our own time of learning at the Global Conference of the Family Firm Institute. And each year I bring back a few gems to share and also share a few gems. But I came back with more gratitude than ever for our team and also for each of you that we have the privilege to serve. So I'd like to do a shout out to the members of our advisory network. Each one is represented by the logo here. If you could all stand as well. While we are a full-service family business advisory firm, we know that it takes a village to transition family businesses from generation to generation. So we carefully vet and pick these advisors for their experience, their expertise, and their capacity to collaborate. And they are here to learn as well as to help you plan and flourish. So thank you guys. And now I'd like to invite several family business guests. We have a father and son, George and Christopher Kane from General Doors Corporation in Bristol. If you can just stand, we welcome you. We have a new baby boy over here, and I understand your nickname is Corky. And we have a G5 sibling partnership, Lisa and her brother Ryan Parry from Parry Insurance in Langhorne, over here. And this is so interesting, but Lisa and her father actually came to one of our forums 25 years ago. And then Barge Miller, G2 president from Miller Edge Company in Philadelphia. Where are you? Barge, did I pronounce that right? Welcome. And lastly, Mike Moransky from Fox invited Rob and Beth Kneff and their son Jacob. So welcome to you all. So our theme this year has been honoring the many voices of enterprising families. And indeed, there are many voices, lots of voices that we need to have the wisdom and the discernment in how to listen and how to move forward. And this year we also had a theme book. It was the Harvard Business Review Family Business Handbook. If you're a member, you should have all received that. We like to use it not only here, but also in our consulting meetings and in our peer groups. What I really like about this book is its focus on ownership and the responsibilities within that. Knowing what lane you're in and when you should be in it, and just do it. Very similar to our 5 mountains, which takes us to our 5 mountains. Now, most of you know this. We developed this about 5 years ago. I know we talk about it ad nauseum, but it's really, we think, a beautiful depiction of the many overlapping roles and responsibilities that so many of you have. So let's just do a little exercise. We didn't do this for a while. Raise your hand if you're in a family business. Now this means everybody, spouses, because you're fully in as well. Keep your hands up. Now if you are not employed, put your hand down. And look around. You can look around to see who's. If you are not a shareholder, put your hand down. So now look at the hands that are up. These folks are in at least 3 mountains. And now put your hand down if you're not on the board. We have several here that are in 4 roles. That is a lot of complexity. So I would just like to note one thing about this tonight. I'm not going to take the whole night, but the family mountain is intentionally larger, and it's at the base. It's the foundation, because we believe that a strong family is the core of a strong family business. Now, it's colored red because family is all about emotional. It's an emotional system. Unconditional love, all are welcome. And our hope is that our kids and our family will not only love each other, but like each other. And, you know, as we get older, move to more peers, Now that's very different than the Blue Mountain, right? Management, operations, there we got to perform, or we might need to get out, or there's more hierarchy, much, much different. And then the Gold Mountain is different yet. That's everyone speaking with one voice about values and vision. So I would like to now invite Dave Griffiths to come up. I did say a little bit more than I wanted to about the mountains. Can't help myself. Dave Griffith recently joined our tribe, and we are so delighted. I invited him to share a little bit of family business governance basics, growing out of his vast experience as a board chair and many other roles. He's titled this Scar Tissue from a Board Chair's Seat. Now, I could say a lot of things about Dave. I'm just going to say a few. You can come up next to me, Dave. After a successful career at IBM and then at MCI, he was invited by his father-in-law to join their family business at Modern in Bristol. And he was invited as a spouse, not an outlaw, but a first-round draft pick. You're getting used to that, right, Dave? And under Dave's leadership, the revenues increased fivefold, so he did a pretty good job. So Dave later led the company through an ESOP and was invited to stay as the board chair, which he has remained doing. And then, in response to a call from his bishop, he recently spent 10 years serving as the executive director of Episcopal Community Services. He's also a nationally recognized speaker and author on lots of topics, including leadership, family business, at Harvard, Temple, Kenyon, Drexel. I won't say more, just to say that what I really like about Dave is that he is just a kind, generous human being that makes everybody and every organization better. So thank you, Dave. And one more thing, can you go to the next slide? I would just like to tell you that Dave has served on a lot of boards. There we go. The ones that are blue are family businesses. The ones on the left side are current boards, and the ones on the right side are past boards. So Dave, you take it from here, okay? Thank you.
So thanks, Sally. No pressure. You only went 3.5 minutes over, so do I get 3.5 minutes back? So I am the second guy, the most happy guy after Sally to see that our speakers showed up. Because Sally said, do you have any backup presentations? And I'm going, well, yeah, I can't sing. I know I can't dance, but we'll work our way through it. So what Sally's asked me to do is set the table about best practices in governance based on the experience that I've had. I'm not going to read to you there, but when I was getting ready to step away from Modern, I accepted a number of boards, or I've been on boards, thinking that was going to be my retirement plan. And then I got drafted to run ECS, which focuses on intergenerational poverty in Philadelphia. But the deal I cut was, I'm going to stay on the boards, you're going to give me the time, and we negotiated, and it worked out really, really well. So, a little bit of experience. I want to share lessons learned, mistakes made, and let's talk about, most of those boards, I'm either the chair or the lead director. And I got to tell you, probably the toughest board I sit on is Drexel, just given all the issues that are going on, and that's been a fascinating education experience. But I want to set some expectations with you about what a board needs to think about and who we serve. Kind of what are the core needs that if you don't have success is really, really difficult. So we serve many stakeholders, not only shareholders, and I'll come back to that in a later slide. I have a strong opinion based on a lot of data that there are really 7 stakeholders for every business, whether it's public or family-owned or private or nonprofit. We need very clear direction from shareholders. At the end of the day, it's the owner's money, it's their heritage, it's their legacy in many cases, and it is essential for a company, and particularly if you have a family CEO, and I would argue even more so a non-family CEO, to have very clear direction for what your mission, your vision, and your values are. And that you have a plan to track and measure and move against that. Otherwise, there's a lack of clarity, and we all know what happens when there's a lack of clarity. And then the board has the wonderful attribute in a family business, particularly if you are an outside director, you have the benefit is that we don't have to have Sunday dinner with the family. And we hold the CEO accountable, whether it's family or outside. Accountability is often, in my experience, the toughest thing to do with a relative or a sibling. There's a lot of, shall we say, water under the dam that's going on that might influence a discussion, and let's just name it, it's real. Some families do really, really well, and some it's a pretty treacherous rapid. So we need to be the vehicle as a board, whether it's outside or family members. I would argue a mixture is probably the way you want to go, and I'll show you why in a minute, in order to hold the CEO accountable and move the mission, vision, value of the shareholders forward. So, the stakeholders. I will tell you that when these 7 stakeholders are served well by a family business, I can tell you the company thrives. And also, in the face of adversity, it survives. So I happen to believe, I'm a strong believer in talent. Better the talent, the better the impact, the better the income. And your talent is defined by your employees, and I would argue one that gets ignored is alumni. They may be your best advocates in the marketplace, and frankly, they may be the best way to attract future talent. Family, and that's not just yours, that's your employees and alumni family, customers, suppliers, vendors, community. One of the emerging trends that is absolutely becoming obvious is corporate social responsibility, or CSR. You see it with a lot of public companies, and I'm laughing really, really hard because most of you are involved one way or the other with your community because it's in your DNA. It's what you do. You're the mom and pop store, or you're the biggest company in town, and there's a wide range in between. But if you take care of the community as an active and thriving member, it tends to take care of you. And sometimes it's just simply the right thing to do. And then there are shareholders and owners, obviously. And when we serve all well, it creates a good return for the shareholders. The other thought I want to make is the 5 mountains. Governance, and particularly a board, good governance, is what makes all 5 mountains work well, because it's the exchange and the glue that holds these mountains together. And I'm sure we're going to hear some of that tonight. So, clear directions from shareholders. Let's dig into that. They absolutely have the right, I would argue it's the responsibility to define what success looks like. When it's right, what does it look like? And you can either work there or not, you can be a board member or not, but at the end of the day, it's their bat and ball. But again, I would hope they would think about the 7 stakeholders. It's our board, if you're on a board, it's your responsibility to know what the shareholders want. Now, this is in big type for a reason. Get clear direction from shareholders, and maybe that's a lot of conversation. It is not something to be taken lightly. Some of the toughest discussions I've had in board startups is where a shareholder just does not want to be clear on that subject. And I would tell you, if you have one takeaway tonight, that would be it. If you are an owner and you are a shareholder and you're going to management and you're going to hold them accountable, you really owe it to yourself and to them to be crystal clear. It may be a messy discussion. It may have to change. You know, in 07, 08, when we went into recession, some of you are not old enough to remember there was a recession, but, and some of us, you know, have had 4. Okay, Matt, that's fine. I've actually had 6. Tell me what the Great Depression was like, Matt. No, but they've got to speak with one voice, I would argue, as much as possible. And sometimes the board's got to say, look, I can't, that's not an actionable goal. That's murky, that's muddy. We need it crystal clear. What, you know, 4 years from now, what does success look like? 10 years from now, what does success look like? We ask, and often do, shareholder strategy statement, and it's going to vary company by company. There's not one size fits all. But again, what does success look like? Get the answer to that question as a board, as a CEO, from your stakeholders. And that's sometimes an incredibly nuanced conversation. But how do you have milestones if you don't know where you're going? I used to laugh a lot about companies that would never share their financial data with their employees, yet expected them to get you from A to B. Well, if you don't know where A is, it's really hard to know where to go to B. And by the way, that's true of a board, it's true of management teams. So that's kind of a fundamental. So let me give you 2 great examples. I have the privilege of just being named to the board of the Kime Company in Ohio. Fascinating company. And we've done, Hank and Sally and the whole team, I guess, 8 years of work? Really diving deep, going through all kinds of muddy waters. And their one purpose, very simple, that we aim for, is the company results fund the community foundation focused on community needs. It's in Charm, Ohio. They have a deep, deep tradition that they believe that's why they're on earth to do. And it's very clear that then the company needs to run really well, not for the shareholders, but the ability to serve the community. Now that's an extreme case. I'm not suggesting that's the only one that's out there, but they're crystal clear, and they have worked really, really hard to define the consequences of that and what it looks like. This happens to be my company, and we're an ESOP. So I want you to imagine what an ESOP, employee stock ownership plan. Every one of our employees is a shareholder after 6 weeks. And it ramps up, and we run a 401k right next to it. And there's some good reasons for that historically. And if you want to talk about that, I'm happy to talk about that off to the side. But these are the things that we call this a permission card. It's actually on a little laminated card, and it's how we roll. And the board has attributes and metrics against 1 through 6, and we hold the CEO accountable for it, and we hold his management team. We hold him responsible for him managing his management team to make that possible. And there's a lot of things that flow out of that, but it says, given a tiebreaker, these would be the rules. So, holding the CEO accountable. Anybody get uncomfortable with that? Family business, it's always good, right? Going to your brother and saying, you know, I don't think this is working. That's a really comfortable conversation, right? The beauty of an outside board, remember, is we don't have to have Sunday dinner with you, right? Our job is to make sure you thrive and you are successful. So, performance he or she controls, a strategy for performance that she doesn't control, he or she doesn't control. Nobody knew COVID was coming, all right? You didn't have a choice. You had to deal with it. What's your plan? Strategy that's consistent with the shareholder goals, and that symmetry and that alignment is unbelievably important. That's almost every quarterly meeting. Let's do a check-in and make sure that these things are aligned and we're moving along a milestone checklist. Annual budget, which is achieved or exceeded, customer sat, radar, and I'm going to come back to what radar is in another slide, comp, related to performance, for talent management. Do you have the horses to get the job done? And this is where it gets really tricky, because in a family business, some of the key jobs may be held by a sibling, but is that sibling the best they can be in the marketplace? And if you're willing to make accommodations, understand that's going to impact shareholder vision. So an outside board sometimes can hold the mirror up and say, look, there's no breath on the mirror. Establish KPIs for each team member. Assess competency to achieve KPIs, coach or replace, and that's the existing team. And then one we forget about, and there's been a lot in the paper lately of a couple of folks, you are a representative of the company 24/7. There is no downtime. How would you like to be the president of University of Pennsylvania the last 2 weeks? You represent the firm. Now, whether right or wrong, you're on the hook. So accountability then cascades down through the organization. And let's talk about radar. I didn't fully appreciate the value of an outside board until we started to get tough questions about what are you going to do with this trend that's coming at you. Let me give you some examples. You look at data, events, trends, new technology, customer needs, and the like. You match where there is an opportunity for things that you do well or that you could do well. You look at the same data and position the company to either take advantage of it or survive it. Here's some really current example. AI is coming. What's your strategy? What are you going to do? What happens with a cyber attack? Are you ready? What is your customer pain? What's your process to understand customer pain and address it? If you're going to go expand and you put a lot of money and your customers don't care, that's probably not a good day. How can we never be low price but always low cost? The best advice I ever got from my dad. He said, look, you never want to be low priced, but you want to be low cost because you know your customer's pain and you find it and you fix it and you address it. Margin will never be a problem if you become a master of that. And your board, if they're picked correctly, have a whole bunch of scar tissue, whole bunch of experience, and challenge you to really have a culture where you're customer-centric. At the end of the day, people have got to love doing business with you. And an outside board that's lived it, done it, worked with it, can get you through that hurdle. And what do we do if, like I had in 2007, phone call, I looked at we normally ran about 8 or 9 million a month, and the billing in the Great Recession went $1.8 million. And I'm going, okay, the guys haven't billed. And I started calling my branch managers. They're saying, Dave, not only have we billed everything, we billed ahead. And I'm going, what do you mean? We have a run rate. What do you do? I'm going to suggest to you that if you scenario plan and you got your checklist and you got your management team and your board and you talk about it, you may not get much sleep, but at least you got a plan. And your board's responsible to hold your feet to the fire. So, independent directors. We bring a fresh, independent, no-holds-barred perspective. And I want to go on the no hard. No Sunday dinner. I recommend that it not be a family member, just because of the dynamics. But the issue that absolutely amazes me that we get into with outside boards and families and going through is it ought to be the safest place to bring a problem. And I can't tell you the number of family businesses where there's an elephant in the room. And it's a business issue, a talent issue, a customer issue, and nobody wants to tell the other party about it, and it's just there, and it's impacting the business. If you do the right job with the board and outside directors, it's not show me the numbers, give me my retainer, see ya. It's what's your biggest challenge? What are you fighting? Do the radar drill, are you ready for it? And that dynamic creates a healthy environment of trust and problem solving. And the beauty of an outside board is we've had, if you do it right, we've got a lot of experience, or we know people who do, and we can bring it into the table. And then this one, which I'm really working hard on with Sally and Hank and the whole team, but we've spent some time talking about governance and where it goes, and we had this aha moment that when a board governance is clicking with the 7 stakeholders, all 5 mountains start to come together and sync. If you think about it, what works the best is when those 5 mountains are aligned. And if you have an outside force to hold you accountable and ask the uncomfortable questions, that's where this thing really starts to take off. And then you problem solve and away you go. So, high alignment between shareholders, board, and management. Player on each mountain understands their proper role. All players respect the people in the other domain. I will tell you, some of my best work has been to be a referee. Throw the red flag. I was going to bring one tonight, but Sally wouldn't let me dress as a zebra. She told me I had to wear a bow tie. She said that was, I'm feeling kind of. A willingness to listen and a willingness to look at the data. I am amazed at the number of decisions that get made in both public. I could tell you the mistakes that IBM made on the PC. I was in the room when we gave it away to Microsoft. And they didn't look at the data. The hubris was huge. They were going to be the low-cost manufacturer, and with Boyle's Law, where it gets 4 times faster at half the price every 4 years, being the low-cost manufacturer is not a really good strategy. But IBM went right over that cliff. Are you willing to look at the data? And here's the one nugget I want you to take home from tonight. If there is a disagreement, and it's from looking at the data, here's the secret sauce. Ask the question, what do you see in the data that I don't? And it's amazing how that discussion starts to take things along. And many of my best board discussions that we've had is, okay, I'm looking at the data. You're saying we need to do A, you're saying we need to do B. What do you see in the data that reinforces that decision? And invariably, that leads to a very, very rich and deep discussion, and we come to some sort of a strategy. All right, stakeholders, common good, we've talked about these. Let me just kind of go through the governance role really quick as kind of the checklist, and we're doing okay. So, governance roles. Let me just remind you, you're going to see us send all the charts here for shareholders. Respect the people in the arena. The people who work for you are carrying the heaviest mail. If they're not respected, why should they respect you? Willingness to listen. I write a blog called Muddy Boots, and it's based on a very simple piece of advice my dad gave me. When I became a manager for the first time, I called him. He said, that's great, stand up, look down. What are you wearing? It was IBM, and I said, my black wingtips. He goes, wrong answer. You need to be wearing muddy boots. I go, Dad, I don't understand. He says, let me give you one piece of advice. You put on your boots, you go out into the field, and you ask 2 questions. How are we doing? How are you doing? And then what can we do better? And then you shut up and you listen. I will tell you, if I had one nugget of the reasonable success I've had in life, is that the people closest to the work generally know the most about the work. If we would just listen, they will tell you. You got to be willing to listen, and you got to be willing to look at the data and make sure that it backs up your assumptions and your price. I'm amazed at things we kind of do. Well, I'm going to run and gun here. Things are getting too tough, folks. You got to have hard data. So shareholders, mission, vision, values, and you elect the board. Those are your core responsibilities. And to tell the board what you want in your mission, your vision, and your values. It's 10 years from now, what does it look like? The board, you are a fiduciary. I'm not big on advisory boards. If I'm going to spend my time with you, I'm going to expect me to be held accountable and you to be held accountable. Radar, we've described that. Board, you need to be truth tellers, as uncomfortable as that may be. You can pick your time and place, but if you don't name the elephant, it's going to be a problem. You're responsible to make sure there's a strategy that matches the mission, vision, values. You share scar tissue, nurturing and holding the CEO accountable. Focus on nurturing. A lot of CEOs are very, very lonely. There goes one now. Yeah, I guess he tasted the soup. Anyway, but a board's job should be to be able to work with and strategize and be there and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. Help me kind of think this through. And if you have picked your board right and they're from a wide range of experiences and backgrounds, that is incredibly valuable because it's got to be safe. And look, we're all big boys and girls here. If you're not getting the job done, it has consequences. But by the way, that's also true of the board. I've been in a company where I had to replace the board because some people just wanted to pick up the fees and didn't want to work hard. That thing that drives me nuts is I send you a board packet and you don't read it, we're done. So, accountability. CEO and management, co-create and implement the strategy for performance, manage resources. You have to do your part on Radar and the company's spokesman. And again, respect the people in the arena, listen, look at the data. So, what does great look like? Sally and I had this debate. She said, okay, this is all really good, but why are we? I can send slides if you guys want them, Dave. I'm happy to. Besides, it's going to come out like this big on the photo here, you know. And I'm kind of fat, and I don't want that in the picture. So, Dave and I know each other well. Dave's been taking care of my company for, 10, 11 years? Yeah, and I still have heat, so I'm very happy. Alignment of owners, board, CEO, company, customer needs. Alignment, symmetry. If you can go to your customer and say, boy, they get me. Remember, I'll never be low price, but I will always be low cost. Your customers value you because what you sell and your advice and your counsel helps them be way better than they do. And I can give you examples of that. The board is the safest place to problem solve. And sometimes you got to go into executive session and say, hey guys, I got a really tough one. Some of the most important board calls are between meetings. Data-driven, curious students, great listeners, professional respect and commitment. The people in the arena have the tough job. Commitment is do your homework. Focus on the mission, vision, values, long-term. Insist on long-term mission, vision, values. Represent all 7 stakeholders. Foster the development of talent. Remember my thought, better the talent, the better the impact, the better the income. The board, and particularly outside board members, can be an incredible resource for a CEO's direct reports and a layer down. Hey, we got a great CFO. You know, you're struggling with financial reporting. This guy's done it 100 times. Go spend a couple hours with him. You know, and then, by the way, be comfortable picking up the phone. Radar, and again, scenario planning, truth-telling culture. And guys, at the end of the day, there's results. And no results, no mission, right? No margin, no mission, no delivery. So that's what great looks like. And I've told you about muddy boots here, but I happen to think it's pretty good advice for any of us. You go into the field, you talk to the people closest to the work, and you ask 2 questions and you listen. So that is right on time, I know. Hank, do I get the $5? The over-under was, it was close. I'm happy to take one or two questions.
Yeah, would there be one or two questions? We have a few minutes.
That bad, huh?
And if not, we have lots of time later on we can catch up, but just don't want to lead in case there's anyone.
Okay. Sure, Dave.
The questions you said, can you repeat those?
For Muddy Boots?
Or how are you doing?
It's
sorry.
right here. How are you?
Oh, got it, okay.
We doing? Okay. H-O-W. Okay. I know Dave well enough, I can do that. And then the question is, what could we do better? You know, I think if you accept the status quo in your business, I was talking with a gentleman, everything's rolling fine, that's when I get the most nervous. Because I know, you know, my dad used to say, son, just remember, it's always darkest before it turns absolutely black. And, you know, the reality is sun comes up, not always going to be the same day, but I just think you got to constantly be looking and just every day say, what can we do better? You know, nobody's perfect. So this notion of listening to your customers, your employees, your vendors. I had a conversation the other day at Modern, maybe about a year and a half ago, with the guy that does our medical. And I reviewed with him kind of where we are, what we're doing. He says, Dave, you know, I think you could take a look. And so my CEO and I went down, we spent him a day. We cut our medical bill in half with no change to the plan. And it's just because they had a different approach, same provider, both are Aetna, both same deal. But, you know, Mike Mitchell's, I guess, vice chair at Graham. And I just said, Mike, you know, I'm getting hammered here. What can we do? And he said, well, I want to explore something with you. You just got to be insanely curious. You know, everybody wants to hear they're great. I want to know how we get better. And I think that's really where the board's value comes in. Boards will keep you humble, but they'll also celebrate with you. One of the things I've done with boards that I think is really essential, I'll take a small stipend, but then I want to be bonused exactly the same as the company. And if we do well, the board does well. If we're not making it, it's nowhere near what a board fee there. I think just this alignment's got to go ripple through everything that you do. But by the way, this is good for children. This is good for you know, any organization that you're going through. If you're insanely curious and comfortable with that, a lot of doors open. And by the way, people appreciate you asking. What else?
Oh, question? Barb?
See if you could give us some more. Oh, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to know if you could elaborate on a few examples of how to always be low cost.
Well, I'm going to give you an example. Can I have 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? So, Modern was in the forklift business. We had 7 divisions, forklift material handling was one. And I had a salesman that was really struggling with an account, and I said, let's go see him. And in large distribution companies, the warehouse manager is usually a direct report to the CEO. And we walk into the warehouse, and I see that the rack has been hit multiple times by the forklifts. The forklifts have been bent. I see 2 or 3 piles of damaged product piled in the corner. And so, you know, I've been around a bit, and I know what that means. And so we go into the office, and it's a young salesman. We introduce, and I said, hey, look, before we start, I'm just curious, what's your workers' comp mod rate? Now, I'm a forklift guy, and I'm asking about his workers' comp mod rate. And he turns white. And I said, no, look, my guess is it's way over 1, and I bet you it's more like 2 or 3, and you're getting hammered. He says, my God, how do you know that? I said, well, you know, it's pretty clear your drivers are hitting things. You got a lot of broken damage. I'm sure your workers' claims are way high. Some may be real, some may be not. I said, I tell you what, if we could fix that, you think we could do business? And the guy goes, you could fix that? And I said, yeah. We put telemetry on the trucks that measured G-force that shut them down when they had an impact that was unacceptable. And it forced them to do the safety check when they started and when they ended. And if they didn't do it, it reported up that they hadn't done the job and there was appropriate discipline. But if they hit something, the truck shut down. So they couldn't run, hide, say, not me. 6 months later, the mod rate, when they did the next one, dropped. A year later, it was substantially below 1. I never had to argue with the guy about price, but we were always low cost. So the question is, listen, find your customer's pain and fix it. And every one of you, that example, you have 15 stories just like that in whatever business you do. What's your primary, I used to love going into, particularly if it was a senior call, and say, you mind telling me how you get paid? What's your bonus structure? And then I would go back and we would think about it. And we did this at IBM, we did it at MCI, I even did it in the nonprofit sector. It's, if you can understand what motivates your customer, how they make money, how they get measured, what does success look like for them, and then match your goods and services to that effort, it's amazing what happens.
Love that example.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
So that's, now, if you want, do you want a G-force for your kids? I mean, I can probably get one. If you have a teenager, it's great. It shuts the car down.
Well, thank you, Dave. You set the stage well. Thank you very much. And we'll have time for questions later. Thank you. Thank you. All good.
$2.
$2. Okay. Well, I'm so glad that our next presenter showed up, that the plane got him here. But we've heard a lot of voices this year through this platform here. We talked about strategic branding from White Penny. We heard from Kevin Hitchcock, G5 CEO from Maine. We heard from Jim Smucker from Ohio. Tonight we're going to hear from Ray from Illinois, Chicago, and I would like to thank Billy and Bill Allen. Could you guys stand up? We would not have known about Ray except for Billy, who is in our owner's executive peer group. He's a valued member there, and he was sharing all about Ray and his father is G2, Bill. So had several conversations with Ray and was just very impressed with his generosity of heart, his lifelong, passionate learning style, and I'll talk a little bit about his daughter later, but really glad that he's here and that he arrived. So we're going to hear from Ray for a while, and then we're going to take a break, and then we are going to have plenty of time for questions after that. And dessert. During break, we will have dessert for 20 minutes. So just briefly, and then I want Ray to take it from here. I'm sure he has lots to share. Ray is the G3 CEO, and he has many roles he'll tell you about at Raynor. It's a leading industry garage door maker, residential, industrial, and commercial. And Ray, I'm just going to let you take it from here. How's that? You're wired up?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad we made it. It was a little rough getting out of Chicago this morning. It turned into this afternoon. And I thank my good friend Bears for picking me up at the airport and bringing me out. I didn't realize when we were coming to this country club that it was in the shadows of Villanova, which as we were entering the neighborhood, I started to recognize it because I brought a couple of kids years ago to kick the tires at Villanova, so started to recognize the neighborhood. So thank you, Sally, for the invite, and thank you to your whole team for helping to put this together. It's a 1-2 punch this evening with my daughter and I. She's coming virtually of sorts. So her part will be as a Gen 4 family business practitioner will come after mine as Generation 3. So we're going to share and contrast what we've learned as we've made this journey and as the next generation starts to enter the business as they make their journey through this whole crazy world of family business, right? And I really appreciate Dave's comments because a lot of what I'll talk about too, that he focused on the governance piece, and I'm a big fan of professional governance in family businesses. And we'll speak to a little bit about our experience in actually trying to usher in professional governance in our family business with my father's generation. So the first thing you gotta always remind yourself when you come to a group like this is I'm not the expert in the room. You gotta know your audience. We're all business practitioners, we all have families. We have a lot in common because of the family dynamic in our businesses. And we all have our own experiences and we all have our own expertise, right? I'm just here to serve as a case study. So we're just one example, and we've learned things. And the thing I love about the Family Business Center community is they're designed to bring us together so we can learn from each other. That's the whole, sort of the holy grail of family business centers. And I belong to a really great one in Chicago that's affiliated with Loyola University. So it's Loyola University Family Business Center. And it was sort of my early learning grounds of everything that I started to learn about trying to understand this crazy thing we call family business, right? My daughter, who will come up next, she spent 6 years with Deloitte in consulting, and she is professional grade presenter. I mean, when you work in consulting for a world-class company like Deloitte, you become very, very good at presenting. And if she were here, she'd critique every part of my presentation, including the PowerPoint, which she hates, right? So you're gonna see some cool contrast between the way she presents and the way I do, because she's really good at it. And I'm gonna trip through this whole thing, so with death by PowerPoint, right? So Sally asked me to start with our family business story. I'm gonna try to cruise through this pretty quickly. We're a typical family business. Started in 1945 with my grandfather. He was Ray Sr. Founded this business. He was very entrepreneurial, very dynamic man. He was really great at business. He was really bad at family. Not really a family guy. So, and that really came to roost in 1979 when he passed away. He really had no succession plan in terms of how the business was going to be managed once he was gone. It's the number one how many G1 family businesses in the room? Any G1 wealth creators here? Entrepreneurs starting a business? Your biggest challenge is letting go. I mean, statistically, G1, when you create a business and put all the blood, sweat, and tears in it, it's really hard to let go. And it's really hard to prepare, especially if you're going to keep it in a family dynamic, to prepare the next generation, if you're not willing to let go, right? That was my grandfather's case. He was textbook. He was going to live forever. Nobody could run the business better than he, and probably right. He's just not going to die, and he didn't have to ever think about it. The extent of his succession planning was for estate taxes. And this whole plan was built around estate tax, had nothing to do really with business succession and the family. And so to say it was a shitstorm would be an understatement. So my father ends up, he's Ray Jr., he's the second Ray. He ends up with the controlling interest of the company through the voting stock. His siblings didn't get any stock. They got stock trusts. To say they were not happy would be an understatement. And so they sued my father because they thought that he had wrangled illegally control. And so that set the tone for the next generation. I was a freshman in college in 1979, and my whole life I'd been being prepared to be the Ray 3, third generation family leader in this business, and it looked just like not much fun because his siblings kind of hated him. They certainly didn't trust him, right? And so I graduate from college eventually, come into the family business. I started in 1983. And the one thing that I noticed that just really bothered me was the lack of unity, lack of harmony, lack of trust within the family. And when we had 6 branches of that family, and they all were very territorial, and they all kind of aligned against my father and his branch. It kind of flowed down to their kids and it flowed down to us. So it was just kind of uncomfortable. I went immediately into the family business. That's what my destiny was. Not necessarily best practice, but we weren't thinking in terms of best practices. So I started, when we put this together, I've got one color code for education and one for kind of career path. And it's trying to demonstrate the commitment to lifelong learning, I think, is one of the key takes away. And I won't go through all this. Brittany would kill me if she saw this, because there's 3 slides just on my career path. And she's like, Dad, get that down to 3 bullet points. Come on, you gotta get this right. But it's hard to put 40 years in one slide. So we just did a lot of stuff. I eventually became a general manager of one of our sister companies. In Springfield, Illinois, we had a hotel group. We built the first Holiday Inns in Illinois back in the day. So we had this hotel group that had kind of spun out of control, largely because when my grandfather passed away, he was responsible for everything hotels. My dad knew nothing about them, and there was no board of directors there, family or professional, to help guide him. And so we made like every mistake you could make, and it eventually led to the divestiture of that company. We started and sold an IndyCar team. I was a general manager and president of an IndyCar team. It was like working for the circus. You set up a tent, you race for a weekend, tent's full down, you go to the next town and do it all over again. So that was a crazy, cool experience, because I was also on the board of directors for CART, the governing body, with folks like Roger Penske and other titans of motorsport. And I just learned a lot. I would say in my continuing education, the greatest part outside of formal education was serving on boards, whether they were for-profit or non-for-profit. And the thing that I enjoyed doing more than kind of geeking out in the family business world was I loved to dive into the governance and the bylaws and try to understand how the businesses were functioning versus how they were designed to function through the bylaws, and find the consistencies and inconsistencies, and just try to really understand what they were doing and why, and if it wasn't consistent, why, and then we changed one or the other. We either changed the bylaws or we changed what we're doing in governing them. And creating these governance committees was one of the, you can accomplish a lot by the committee structures that are under your governance, and how you kind of divide and conquer the work. We started up companies, we sold companies. We ended up selling our Quick Wall company. We sold our hotel company. I became active in industry boards. The DASMA is one of our manufacturers industry boards. Eventually was named executive vice president in 1997, and then eventually became the president in 2004. We bought a company along the way in Canada. That was a huge education experience for me, because I led the integration effort, and so it kind of unofficially reported to me, and that was a huge learning experience. And then other boards, eventually the earth moved when my dad named me the president and CEO of Raynor Worldwide in 2004. I would say that would have never happened without outside directors, because like his father before him, he had a very difficult time of getting his head around letting go. And if without outside board member influence saying, Ray, to my father, what's the problem? How can we move this along? He's doing all the work. And my dad's comment would have been in that time, he's not ready, typical. And they would press the issue and say, why isn't he ready? What can we do to help him develop? And there was no real clear answer. It's like, he's kind of done it all, so he is ready. He said, my father wasn't ready. And so they really helped, and if it would have been coming from me, it would have sounded very self-serving. So having an outside influence coming with that voice was really critical. Became a member of Young Presidents Organization in 2005. That was also very educational for me. And it allowed me to, the continuous learning. In fact, through YPO, me and several others have spent a lot of time doing exactly this kind of thing with family businesses within YPO, talking about governance. And the way that we broke that, very consistent with Dave's presentation, was we had one whole section that was why professional governance, and breaking down the myths and the perceived threats of bringing in outside directors into a family business. That was part one. Part two was how do you do it? How do you put the whole thing together? And then part three was best practices and lessons learned from those who have already done it, including, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So not everything goes great just because you bring in outside directors. That becomes a whole, the governance is a whole thing to manage, just like the business is important to manage. Got my first really big outside director role, although I had spent a lot of time advising companies informally. PBS Chemicals is a Detroit-based chemical manufacturing and distribution company, over $1 billion, global company, both in manufacturing and distribution. And they brought me in as an outside director primarily to help them navigate succession planning from a second generation to a third generation. And it was the dynamic in that company was going from a controlling owner, so dad had all the voting stock, to 4 siblings who were going to then be challenged with running the company as a sibling partnership for divided ownership, divided voting, and all of the nuances of now trying to run a company as a team as opposed to running it as just someone who's in charge. And so that's been a huge education, and it's been immensely successful. They've done a great job. I've written a lot. So I started, as I was putting this together, I thought to include, because to me, I've had a lifelong pursuit of trying to learn and understand best practices in a family business environment. And one of the first big undertakings in that realm was this creating our governance, our outside professional governance. And I wrote a thing called our Raynor Board of Directors Prospectus. And I've got a sample of it. I've got a little show and tell here. So I told Sally, as I was getting ready for this, that I could go down a number of rabbit holes and spend 25 minutes on any one topic. And we're going to try to get through this whole thing in 25 minutes. And this is one that we could spend a day or a workshop on, is how do you get ready to bring in independent directors if you haven't done it before. And so we spent a lot of time getting ready, and we developed this prospectus really with the idea in mind of what do you do once you attract a really good quality independent director to get them on their feet and get them up to speed and get them ready to help your business and your family. And just the outline, I'll just talk to the outline. We started kind of macro and then kept drilling down. So the first chapter is about our industry. So Corky and Chris would be in here because they operate in our industry, right? They're also a door manufacturing company. And we just give kind of the A to Z industry overview and some history about what our industry looks like. Then we get into a whole chapter on our company story. The outline, kind of a deep dive into all the history and the good, the bad, and the ugly of Raynor over the course of 75 years. Then we have a whole section on family and who are the family members, what are the branches, who are the shareholders. We've got over 75 family shareholders, over second, third, fourth, fifth, and 1 6th generation family member shareholders. So lots of shareholders. Then we get into our foundational documents, our sort of the philosophy of our company, the mission, vision, core values, kinds of things, things that are legacy. We have the bylaws, then we have our governance document, what does the board consist of, its committees, its charters, the way it's organized, its meeting structures, fees, the A to Z for governance. And then we have a strategic plan for each company division. And then when we recruit a director, we have teams of people in orientation that take each of these chapters and present and help over like a couple-day period, help orient a new director to their role as a director. And kind of have this as a reference. This was shared with Loyola University's Family Business Center maybe 15 years ago, and it's been widely copied and borrowed from. And then you take this and you just tweak it and you make it fit your family, but it just serves as a useful format, and again, just a example of how one company approached getting ready for governance. And I'm happy to give this to you and share it. I've got an electronic format. You can get it from Sally. It's free for the taking if you're interested. So I finally arrived in 2013 as the next generation chairman upon my father's death. When my grandfather passed away, he was the controlling owner. He was the chairman of the board. He was the CEO. He was the president. And he took all of that to the grave with him. After his death, my father emerged as the next generation controlling owner. So we have diluted our controlling, our shares of stock that are Class A voting shares is 1% of the equity of the company. So imagine if there's 1 million shares, 10,000 of them are voting shares, and all you need is 51% of those to be the controlling owner, to have voting control. And that's the way my grandfather had set it up. And so my father became that next generation voting, controlling owner of the company, with not only siblings as partners through trust, but also my generation, third generation, as shareholders. So we went in one move from a pure controlling owner structure to one that was controlling owner plus siblings plus cousins, or what generation 1 controlling owner, generation 2 sibling partnerships, generation 3 cousin consortiums. Have you heard these kinds of language, right? So we became all of that like overnight without being prepared for it or coached. And the problem is when a first generation wealth creator, business leader, entrepreneur leaves the planet, whoever's left just lost the biggest confidant, the biggest expert that used to be in the room. They're gone. And so if without preparation, say it goes to a wife or goes to kids or goes wherever it goes and they're not prepared, don't expect it to be great, right? So a lot of what I do in coaching family businesses talks about what happens if you get hit by the bus. In the current generation, if you're the CEO, if you're the chairman, depending on how your family business stock structure looks and works, what happens if you get hit by the bus? And most of us, family business practitioners, aren't really comfortable or prepared to answer that question. It's just not very well prepared, which goes back to Dave's point about how important governance can be and putting that in place before these kinds of things happen. Next slide, Sally. So today, Raynor Worldwide, what I manage or what I'm responsible for as its chairman and CEO is we have what we like to think of our 3 buckets. We have manufacturing companies, we have wholesale distribution companies, and then we have retail garage door stores or, mom and pop type independent door dealers who would sell, install, and service your door products at your home or your business, right? So we have 3 fairly large manufacturing companies. Raynor is one brand. Richards Wilcox is our Canadian brand. ProDoor is our a new acquisition from 2020, which to Dave's earlier point, practices the low-cost strategy. We have a book, another part of my show and tell. I told Sally I'd bring the most influential, best things I've read and share them with you. And if you're interested, we can find a way to get you copies of this stuff. So this one is The Discipline of Market Leaders. Probably 20 years old now, so I'm dating myself, but this was instrumental in when we were going through a strategic planning process maybe 20 years ago, might have been 25. But it was really a great way to get your head around strategy and what kind of business are you really. And this would argue or suggest that there are three vital strategic platforms that you can think about when you think about your business. Low-cost producer is one of them, if you think of a triangle. A customer-centric company, not necessarily maybe trying to be low-cost, but trying to provide total solutions to a customer would be another platform. And then product leader would be a third, which is not trying to be low-cost at all. Is trying to push the envelope of technology, innovation, features. It's all about the product, not about the price. And so this was instrumental in helping us get our heads around strategy formulation and how we look at our companies. And at the time, we were really, really struggling with the fact that Raynor brand could never be low cost. We could never get there. Our cost structure was just too high, and our DNA didn't allow us to change our cost structure so that we could be low cost. And so we were constantly frustrating ourselves and our dealer network, which Bill and Bill are part of. Thank you for being here, guys, and for the invitation. You know, how do we provide them with entry-level products? We could just never do that effectively. And we bought this Pro Door company to help fix that. And its DNA is completely different than the Raynor or RW DNA. They're really different companies, and the only way we got it right was going out and acquiring a company that was already good at it and then not screwing it up, right? Staying out of its way and not trying to Raynorize it, as we like to say. Pro Door, this wholesale is a whole system of wholesale centers. We've got like half a dozen of those around the country right now, and it's growing fast. And then retail is garage door dealerships, like what the Allens run. We have a network of about 15 or 18 of those stores with the goal of growing it to like 100 maybe. And not competing directly against our dealers, but working in markets adjacent or side or in different regions of the country. We also provide an outlet for dealers to perhaps sell their business. So if they don't have an internal succession plan and they don't have a management buyout or an ESOP opportunity, and they're looking for an outlet to maybe sell their business, this Raynor Door Authority group is could be a possible fit for them. How we doing on time, Sally? So, 10 minutes? Okay, pretty good, I think. When Sally and I were talking over the phone about the things that might be important for this group to learn or understand from our experience, we used, this was also very instrumental in our formation. We call it doesn't really show very well on this slide, but it's the 3-circle model. Are you familiar with this? It comes out of Harvard Business Press. And I have a book, Generation to Generation. This is usually the first book I give out to family business practitioners. This is taught at Harvard's Owner Management Program, OMP program. So if you're getting an advanced family business MBA from Harvard, you might go through the OMP program. And one of their courses is built around this book, Generation to Generation. And in it basically says a family business is different and unique from the public world because it has 3 major intersecting. When we did the hand raising, it's this, right? So you have a family, right? And this suggests that you would have a governance structure for family, and we would call that a family council. In bigger businesses, they might call it a family office. But it's all about putting some governance structure, allowing for formal input and organization so that family can have a voice in the family business, whether they're shareholders or not. Because the larger your family businesses get, you have to recognize that you're not only dealing with family shareholders, but you're dealing with spouses and kids and next generation. And they may not be shareholders, but they have a huge and profound impact on how the family operates, right? You have the ownership or the shareholders group. So we call that the ownership circle, governed by a board of directors, hopefully. And then you have the business itself, which is governed by its management hierarchy, CEO, president, and executive leadership team, right? And they all overlap. And so depending on where you fit in the circle. So I'm in this profoundly gray area where I am a family member, okay? I am a shareholder, and I am a part of management. And each of these have life cycles. And so you think of business life cycles where, you can grow and you can plateau, and hopefully you don't go into long, slow decline. Hopefully you find a way to grow again and plateau again and repeat, God willing. Families have life cycles. I mean, we come and we go. We have mortality, and you have a need for succession, right? And businesses, so you have shareholders who come and go, and you have ownership transitions. How many times have I talked to business owners, and when you have the discussion about succession, it's about who's going to manage the business, right? It's like, who's going to own it? When a controlling owner, when a major shareholder deceases, where those shares go, and how's that going to change the ownership structure? And so you have to think of succession not only in terms of management succession, but ownership generational transitions, right? So this helps explain that. And generation to generation, I stock it, and I'm probably mailing out a copy of that book at least once a month, if not once a week, right? Because someone's interested in understanding those dynamics. There's 3 spinning plates. The cycle can be anywhere, and they can be all different, and it changes the dynamics of your family business profoundly based on how it's moving through time. One of the other interesting things, we advanced forward, Sally and I were talking, and Dave hit on this in his presentation. I was sitting with my father. He was very bitter about his family, right? Because of the way that he was being treated disrespectfully in the family business, right? They didn't trust him, they didn't like him, and the business was doing magnificently. The company is just thriving, it's growing. He's paying dividends when his father never did. Where he's opened up the board meetings were a fiasco because there was really no structure, and it was 100% rubber stamp because he was a controlling owner, and that's what they had learned from his father, right? But the family wasn't happy. And so I was with my father, and I asked him one day, I said, Dad, have you considered the difference between your CEO role and your chairman of the board role? And he's like, no, I mean, it's CEO, chairman, it's my job. I'm like, but Dad, if you wrote job descriptions around the two, would they look different? Or, if you thought about the distinction between the governance and the management, and I was learning this stuff at the foot of John Ward, one of the family business guru at the time, Leon Danko before him. And so I was learning this stuff about best practices in professionalizing governance and challenging him a little bit. And he wanted none of it. And so I finally said, would you let me take a crack at maybe drafting a position scope for CEO and a separate one for chairman and try to draw out those distinctions? And he was like, yeah, knock yourself out. The one thing I loved about my father was he was not afraid of change. So he'd be like, yeah, show me what you got. So here again is another educational opportunity for me. And I go down the rabbit hole of trying to understand what the best practice is and how a chairman role should differ from a CEO role in a properly governed family business. And just like Dave suggested, I wrote the chairman position scope around those different constituency groups, right? It's around the shareholders. It's around the board of directors. It's around the community. It's around philanthropy. It's around the management team and all the different responsibilities that, a chairman and his board has for electing a president or CEO, holding them accountable, having coherent strategy, understanding that succession has to happen. You need to build team and bench strength. And then I did the CEO position scope was built around organizational business structures like finance and engineering and product development, and marketing and IT, cybersecurity, and all the stuff that businesses have to work around. With the emphasis on the chairman was the responsibility for shareholder relations. So there was a whole chapter in this position scope that we titled Shareholder Relations. One was titled Board Relations, Community Relations, right? And if you treat your shareholders like they own the place, not you because you're the controlling shareholder with the votes, but if you actually treated the shareholders like they own the place and brought them in and communicated really well, had some level of transparency, because my dad was a trustworthy guy. He didn't cheat, he didn't steal. I mean, he wasn't doing anything nefarious, but none of his family members would have believed that. So I started working on this governance for the simple purpose of trying to drive in unity and harmony within the family. The business, we didn't need it in the day for helping the business grow and helping the business be successful. We needed to get the family right. We had a functional business and a dysfunctional family. And so with time and effort, and the day, I mean, if I had another half an hour, I'd tell you the story about how we made the change, because they wanted to tar and feather me for even offering the idea of bringing in outsiders into our, it's like, what are you trying to do, Ray? You're trying to take the place, you're trying to take over. They didn't trust me either, right? So this distinction of trying to treat the shareholders with respect and be transparent and communicative. And so I told my dad, I said, I'll tell you what, I'll be your vice chair, and I'll take your job description, and my job will be to assist you with all of your responsibilities. And he says, and you have the shareholders 100%. I said, got it. And so then I started the care, feeding, nurturing of shareholders. And they, first they didn't know how to take me, but over time, I'm talking a decade, they started to realize that, hey, we're getting all the information. Hey, when we call, we get called back. When we have something we need, when we have a concern or an issue. And then we created this family council so that we invite their participation. We got to get our heads around family employment policy. What do you guys think? What should that look like? You kind of have to spoon feed some of this stuff, because you can't ask 75 shareholders who don't know anything really, who may not know anything really about business, to come back with a coherent, family employment policy. But you can say, guys, here's the experts, here's the readings, here's the stuff. Sift through this, give us what you think, what you hear in the family. And then let's put this thing together. Let's put it together, collectively. So that was huge in getting right now, my family is golden. They're on board, they're supportive. I get love letters and thank you mail, and they think I'm great now, right? And nothing really changed other than the attitude that we presented towards them.
Well, it's actually, I love the story. I heard the story, and I think we might have time for you to tell that after break,
okay,
if there's interest.
Sure.
Actually, we're going to pause for a break now for dessert, 20 minutes, and then we'll hear more from Ray and also from Brittany, and then we'll have at least a half an hour for questions. Okay? Thank you for part one, and the restrooms are out off the lobby. Dessert is back there. Have at it. Enjoy. Well, thank you, Brittany, for taking time out of your very full schedule to be with us remotely as you are attending to a higher power, which is motherhood or parenthood. I think it's one of the highest callings that any of us can have here. By the time this airs, you probably will have delivered your second child, and we'll be eager to hear about that. So I've been just really impressed with you, with your love for your family, with your love for the business that your great-grandfather started, and your contributions already to Fort of the Mountains as a 32-year-old. It's quite impressive to the family, as a shareholder, as in management, and also as a board member.
Well, thank you so much, Sally. I appreciate that introduction. And I'll first just thank you as well for inviting me to share. I'm always happy to share about my story, my family's story, and hope that others can find it helpful along their journey. I appreciate you for helping me make this happen, to pre-record and do this virtually, because as you mentioned, hopefully by the time you're having your forum discussion, I'm at home snuggling my newborn second baby. So I appreciate you making this happen via the recording as well. So thank you.
Well, and to continue on that theme, first things first, tell us a little bit about your nuclear family, your husband and your son.
Sure. Let me share my pictures so that you can see. Let me know when we have it going here.
Okay, it's
Got
up.
it? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I'd love to share about my family. So I'll start with my husband, RJ. Let's see, if we look at this middle picture, this is myself and RJ and our son, our first son, Joseph. This photo was taken in April of this year, so it's a little bit dated, but you can get a sense of our family. RJ and I were married in 2019. He actually, and he works in our business as well. He was recruited in a bit earlier than that. When he asked for my hand in marriage, when he took my dad out to dinner, that quickly turned into a recruiting conversation. And my dad actually recruited him into the business before I was. So he is currently our VP of supply chain. So he manages all of the warehouse, shipping, inventory. So he has his hands full, but he loves it. And let's see, the picture on the left I included. So this includes my Uncle Todd on the left-hand side and my dad on the right-hand side, and then RJ, myself, and Joseph. That's actually from April 2022. So and that one, I wanted to include that one because the four of us, my dad, my uncle, and RJ and I, are the current active family members who work in management in our company. And this was a really proud historic moment for us. It was right when we took possession of a new 600,000 square foot warehouse and manufacturing facility. So now it looks totally different. There's a massive production line in there and a full warehouse operation happening, and it's very active. But this was right when we took possession of that building. So that was a really proud moment I wanted to include. And then on the right-hand side this is my siblings. So I have four younger brothers, and we recently, just in July, went on a hiking trip and got this photo. And none of them are currently active in the business, but they are all pursuing excellence in their own right. So we'll see. A couple of them are still fairly young. My youngest brother just went off to college a couple weeks ago. So we'll see where they end up.
Oh, how exciting. And they would have had almost two mothers.
Yeah, Sam, you could maybe say that.
So tell us what it was like to grow up as a fourth generation family member. And did you always plan to join the family business?
Well, I can tell you I have really great memories growing up in the family business. I recall going to customer events and going to shareholder meetings and having a great time at the shareholder meetings with my cousins. And I did pull a picture too from I think this one was actually from Disneyland when we did a big customer event. This would have been like circa 2005 maybe. And this picture is my four younger brothers and myself. And I had to get my mom in there somewhere. She would be not happy with me if I left her out. So we have my mom here. She's an integral part of our family as well. So I wanted to throw this. This is a good memory from one of our customer events back in the day. And I think just kind of illustrates what it was like growing up in the business to some extent. The other part of your question, did I always anticipate joining the family business? I would say the short answer to that is no. There was never an expectation for any of us to join the business, at least that I know of. Maybe when my dad's on, he'll have a different answer. I don't know if he was subtly nudging me one way or another as I was growing, but there was never any explicit pressure. In fact, we have a policy that all family members must go pursue outside employment for at least 3 years in a relevant field before working in the family business. And so out of school, I pursued a career in consulting, IT consulting that turned into customer and marketing consulting. And I enjoyed that career. It was great learning, great company to work for. I had wonderful colleagues, great training and was making my way up that ladder when COVID hit. And then I think, as we all experienced, just a complete upheaval of what we considered normal. And I think everyone had quite a bit of internal reflection during that time. And all of the stars lined up the right way for me to make the switch to join our family business. And that happened in October of 2020. So, and I couldn't be happier with the change.
Well, that's really amazing. And before that, before you joined the business, you also have quite a solid educational background. Could you just say a word about that?
Sure. Let's see, I got my slide on that one too. Yeah. So I was blessed to be accepted in the University of Notre Dame for my undergraduate studies. I was the first one in my family to go to Notre Dame, but now since I will have 3 of my younger brothers will graduate from Notre Dame, God willing. Sam is a freshman, so he's got 4 years to get through, but I think he'll be just fine. And I graduated with a degree in IT management in 2013. I took that to work at Deloitte Consulting for a number of years before deciding to go pursue my MBA. Did that at University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Incredible experience, incredible classmates that I still keep in touch with, plenty of them. And got that degree completed in 2018. Shortly after that, let's see, I did 2 more years at Deloitte after graduating with my MBA. And then that's when I joined Raynor. And then since then, I've also pursued some continuing education with Kellogg School of Management. They have some really great executive education programs. It's a bit controversial because there's quite a healthy and friendly rivalry between the 2 Chicago business schools. So to have both of those on my resume, it could be a little contentious, but both schools, I have had such a good experience and great educational experience with both. So it's been fun to do a little bit of that executive education as well with Kellogg. Well, hats off to you for getting, again, that family education, family business education, and also, you're really earning your place. This is not, some don't do that as well. So let's move on to the Blue Mountain, the operating mountain. You mentioned you joined Raynor a number of years ago. I'm impressed with your onboarding process. Tell us about that. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I joined in October of 2020. So it was in the height of COVID, and so it was, I think onboarding was challenging. Everyone was working remotely. I couldn't go visit customers. One, because travel was somewhat restricted, but another thing, somewhat of a hidden blessing in our industry, was our volume skyrocketed during COVID. Everyone needed garage doors for their homes. They were at home and looking at their old garage door and ordering garage doors. So it was hard to do customer visits just because our dealers were so busy. So that was another challenging piece of it. I couldn't go visit we have a sister company up in Canada. Canada was completely shut down. I couldn't go visit them and meet that team in person for probably a year and a half after I joined. So that piece of the onboarding was challenging. I will say my dad did a really nice job socializing my entrance into the company. I think it's somewhat challenging to bring in family members into a family business. You kind of mentioned it, Sally. There's maybe some underlying impression or assumption that you're being hired just because you're a family member. Yeah. And so you have to combat that a bit. And I think my dad did a nice job of making sure everyone was on board, from my family, my brothers, our shareholder group, our company leadership, and just making sure everyone was comfortable and understood the plan. And he did the same thing for RJ too. So from that perspective, I think, from the leadership perspective, I think that all went really smoothly. And with my background, my family was also fairly comfortable with me joining the business as well. So there really wasn't too much friction from that perspective. The thing that I did learn, so to your onboarding question, the thing that I did learn from my consulting background is you're responsible for your own onboarding. And so even though I was working through the COVID situation, I tried to take it into my own hands as much as possible. There was a great book I read, The First 90 Days by, I believe it's Michael Watkins. And I kind of used that book as a framework, and I put together my own onboarding learning plan for made my own first 100 days. So I pulled the slide from that plan. So I put this together and kind of had 3 phases for myself. Phase 1, spend my first 2.5 months or, first month or so, just learn, just absorb, go as much as I could, meet with people, be it virtually or however, learn our products, learn our processes. And then phase 2, kind of synthesize everything that I had gathered from that learning and make my hypothesis about what do I think we need to do. And then from there, prioritize what we need to do, and then create my strategic plan that we could then go execute. So I think that helped me quite a bit, and I would highly recommend that that first 90 days book. It was an incredible tool for me to use as I was just coming into a brand new role in a new company, in a leadership position.
I think that is just remarkable, Brittany. Most don't do that, and I hope everyone listening takes that to heart. One of our principles as we work with families in transitioning from one generation to another is that the rising gen needs to step up, and earn trust and prove competence, and you're certainly doing that. So you now are in another role. You're the VP of Marketing. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. So yeah, then I did a similar thing when I transitioned from the director of marketing role to the VP of marketing role. So director of marketing role, this was the aim of that job, was to direct the marketing efforts for the Raynor Garage Doors brand. We have several other brands in our portfolio, and it made sense. I think as we went along, it really made sense to have somebody at the Raynor worldwide level. This is the umbrella organization over all of our brands, to help coordinate the efforts between all of our brands and come up with a solid brand strategy. What's the purpose of this brand? What markets does this brand serve, and how is it different? How do we justify having 4 different brands, and how do they work together, and how do they stay in their own lane? And so that's become my job now, is overseeing the marketing efforts for our broader organization and just helping to make those connections, inter-brand connections as well.
Excellent. So let's shift. We talked a little bit about the red family mountain, the blue operating business. Let's shift to the gold shareholder mountain. So, we color this gold because he who owns the gold makes the rules. This is where the stewardship is, the power and the authority. Tell us a little bit about when you became a shareholder, what that means to you, and then a little bit about your shareholder onboarding process.
All right, I became a shareholder. I was an infant. I think when I became a shareholder, now my dad will have to fact correct this when you have him, but I think my grandfather gifted me shares first, but maybe it was my dad. I don't know. So we'll have to ask him. But I've been a shareholder since I could remember. So as a child, you don't really understand the family legacy and the meaning and behind it. So as I've grown, and especially as I've taken a more active role in the business, being a shareholder has taken on new layers of meaning for me. Onboarding has evolved for our family. So my dad first put together a shareholder orientation, I believe around 2012, in conjunction with our family reunion. So we've been doing family reunions for forever. They have also become more sophisticated. Our last family reunion was really fun. It was in Nashville, and my dad will tell you too, it felt more like a conference. I think we had 175 people and a whole agenda and planned activities, and that's always fun to get the family together and do that. And we do, as part of the family reunion, we do the shareholder orientation. So as we were planning the 2022 family reunion, I had the opportunity to refresh the shareholder orientation a bit. So I did that. I included this one as well. So just to give you a sense of what we talk about in our shareholder orientation, this is the outline for the shareholder orientation presentation. So we go through Family Business 101. We use a 3-circle framework to describe the difference between family, ownership, and management, very similar to the 5-mountain model. And we talk about governance for each of those circles. And then we go into Raynor Worldwide 101. So this is just about our business. What products do we make? What markets do we serve? What are our brands? How are they different? So we get into that, a little bit of the history. And then we get into owner responsibility, where we share. I'm trying to help my family understand their role, or I guess our family shareholders understand their role as stewards of our business. We're not just taking from this business. We need to give so that it can make it to the next generation and the next generation. And we're just caretakers of it along our journey. So that's kind of the goal of this owner responsibility, is to lay out our owner strategy, and our role as stewards. And then the last piece is, what can I do next? We want to encourage engaged family shareholders. And so just to give a few examples of ways that our family members can be involved, family member shareholders.
That is just really excellent, Brittany. And you mentioned that you had a chance to refresh that, and you do this as part of your family reunion, which falls under kind of family council. Do you have a few slides of your last reunion?
Yes, let me flip to those. It was a really great time. Find them here. Here we go. Okay. So this is a few photos from our family reunion. This was last July 2022. We all went to Nashville. We have family all over the country, so it's kind of like, let's just pick a fun destination and go. 165 family members joined us. You can see that big photo of everyone. That was super cool photo to get. This is my cousin Corey on the stage. He's our family council chairman. So he helped plan this and got some of the stage time, and my dad's on stage with him there. What else can I share? We did the shareholder orientation and a shareholder update meeting as part of this reunion. So that's my dad and I presenting some of the shareholder orientation. And I should say, on that shareholder orientation piece, I guess not even primarily meant. It's a nice opportunity for new shareholders that are kind of coming into being a shareholder when they're 18. Our family members can be shareholders before they're 18, but we do have a policy that we call our heir apparent policy, where before you're 18, you can have some of the perks of being a shareholder be included in this group without actually holding shares, just to minimize challenges with taxes and all sorts of other things. So many of our shareholders become shareholders when they turn 18. So that's a really nice time to sit in on the shareholder orientation. But we invite everybody and say, hey, if you're not a shareholder yet, great to learn. And if you've been a shareholder forever, great to be refreshed. So everyone's welcome to this.
Awesome.
We went to a Grand Ole Opry show, so that was wonderful. These three here are my Uncle Jack, my Aunt Eleanor, my Aunt Dee. So my Uncle Jack has since passed away, but these are our remaining generation 2 family members. So it was great to have the 3 of them there. And this was just some feedback. We had wonderful feedback from our family on this event. They really appreciate it. So just a great way to encourage that family harmony and family unity, and make sure our family feels like they're part of the business as well.
Well, and I applaud your practice of doing a lot of engagement and connections, and getting feedback from your shareholders and family members. And by the way, you mentioned 165 family members. How many shareholders, Brittany?
We have about 75 shareholders.
75 shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and just a word about the family council, how you have that set up, one from each branch. Is that correct?
That's right. Let me pull that one up. So here's our family council. So the way we organize our family is our founding G1 founding owner. This looks like something got. Here we go. Our founding owner, G1 Ray Nicewander Sr. had 6 kids. And so those are our 6 family branches is how we kind of organize now. So our family council has 1 representative from each branch. And so these are the representatives here. And they do, I think the family council is extremely valuable to our organization. It's a really nice way to just have that. They're like the liaison group between the family and the board and the management team. So they meet regularly. They provide input on certain decisions like bringing on new board members. They help with the family reunions. They help just collect family information when we have births or deaths or marriages or contact information changes. So they're super helpful with all of that.
That's excellent. Yeah, as we know, the family is the foundation. It gives the life, the soul to the business.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just move a little bit to the Green Mountain, the board mountain. You're already contributing to the board. Tell us a little bit about your path onto the board and aspirations going forward.
Sure. Oh, so I had this one color coded with the gold because I guess the way I was thinking about it is the governance structure for our ownership is the board of directors. But yes, I see how you have it as the green. So this is our board. I've been a part of the board. I actually was on the board prior to joining the management team. So I've been on the board since April of 2019. And that's been a really great experience. It was nice for me to kind of get my feet wet within the business. And at the time when we were recruiting for, my dad was recruiting for a new board position, the thought was, let's bring on a Generation 4 family member to represent the 4th generation. And I, at that point, was working at Deloitte. No, I would have been in business school. So I had my undergrad degree, had some experience with Deloitte consulting, was working on my MBA. So I think I was a logical candidate, and I had my family's full support. So it was an easy transition to pull me on the board, and I've enjoyed my role there as well.
So, and just the final question here, Brittany, what words of wisdom do you have for other folks that are in the room in November and other family businesses in general? You have been very thoughtful, you and your family, about your participation and the family's participation. What counsel, words of wisdom, anything you want to share?
Oh, as I thought about this question, Sally, I kept thinking of more things. So we'll see. I'd say the first thing that popped to my mind was quality engagement early on, as you're developing the next gen. So in our family, our family reunions and doing the orientation is a great way we can start pulling in our next gen. In the internship program, I had the opportunity to develop an internship program for my youngest brother, Sam, and he came back 3 summers in a row. So I think that says something. And, we've started planting the seeds of, maybe you'd like to work here someday. So that was a great experience for him, and a good way to get that early engagement. So that's one thing. The other thing that we landed on as a family, as far as family employment, is having a high bar of entry. So our requirements for family employment are a 4-year college degree in a relevant field, 3 years outside work experience in a relevant field, and there must be a business need. We don't make roles for family members, and I think that has served us really well. Like I was mentioning before, there was no pressure for me to join, so I think that's helpful. It's totally our families. It's your own choice if you want to work in the business, if you want to Or if you want to, we try to really educate our family on your role as a shareholder is different than your role as a family member, is different than your role as an employee. So, there's merit to all of them. So if you're not an employee, a family management team, that's okay. You can be an engaged family shareholder. And if you're a family member, that's okay. You're still part of our family. So, no pressure, I think was my other thing. Oh gosh, what else? My dad would say, be generous. We try to be generous with our family, and our family employees as well. I think sometimes there's this thought that, well, if you're a family member, you should come at a discount. And I would say that my dad has a very different philosophy, which I appreciate. And we're compensated competitively, and it makes our choice to work in the business very easy. And then my last thing I would say is just to encourage forever students, whether they're working in the business or not, having a way to facilitate continuous education. I think especially for employees, because I think there's sometimes this feeling of, oh, maybe I shouldn't take time to go learn and take time away from my job to go learn, but it's so important. And the more that we can make it an expectation, or just make sure that we know that it's okay and it's encouraged to go continue to learn and do things like the Kellogg classes, or there's so many things out there that you can always continue to learn. I think that's wonderful for nurturing that next generation as well.
Well, Brittany, I couldn't agree with you more on all of those things. And I just want to thank you for your time and your generosity and your wholehearted spirit. Sending you prayers and blessings for your birth of your new baby.
Oh, thank you so much, Sally. And I hope everything goes well with the forum dinner, and I'm sure it will be wonderful. So thank you again for including me, and thank you for being gracious enough to allow me to pre-record this and do it virtually. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So Ray, come on up and stand up here with me. A question for you. What was that like to, hear your daughter share, and then anything else you want to build on what she said or other things that you wanted to share earlier? And then we'll open it up.
Okay, thank you. Well, obviously, I'm very proud. Not just of Brittany, but also RJ. They're amazing, amazing young people. Let me collect myself here for a second. Also, Brittany wasn't completely forthright in the presentation. I think a good point I'll tease out of that is she totally underplayed her board role. And I think she did that probably because of confidentiality, was probably what was going through her head when she was thinking about that. But I'll give you the full, I'll be fully transparent. So one of the slides I didn't get to was the whole topic of succession planning. I would say out of everything I talk about in the family business world, the number one topic is succession, or it's governance, Dave's topic, right? The other is succession planning and the need for succession planning. And I break that down into two parts. One is, Sam and I were talking about this at the break. One is what we call continuity planning. You get to plan your plan and then execute it. So, I'm going to let go of my CEO role when I'm 64. Okay, I'm going to let go of my chairman role when I'm age 70. I'm going to give up controlling owner when I'm age 76. I mean, we got it all planned out, right? God willing, you get to live your plan. That's continuity. And everybody thinks they're going to live their plan and get to execute if they're even thinking about having a plan, right? We also put equal emphasis on contingency planning. What happens if you get hit by the bus on the way home tonight? What if you're not here tomorrow and you've got a business, a family, customers, community, all these constituent groups that depend on a solid business, and you're not here, okay? It's the number one reason that I try to tell business owners why they should consider professional governance. If nothing more, it's an insurance policy against something bad happening to you in an untimed or unplanned way. And not just you, the manager, but you, the owner, and not just you, but also your key executives. So my team is my board, we spend one board meeting a year. The chief topic is contingency and continuity planning. And myself and all of our key executives have to come to the board and explain what happens, what they recommend if they're not here tomorrow. How's it work? What's the plan? What's the contingency plan? And then you get a really good understanding of your bench strength, you know, what you got, what you don't have. Are we going outside to replace somebody? How's it going to work? So after my dad died, true to form, next board meeting, I'm now the new controlling owner, yay, right? What happens if I'm gone tomorrow? What's the plan, Ray? You know, how's it going to work? And so I broke my life into 4 6-year buckets. At the time, I didn't have any heirs that were in the ready, willing, and able category. Brittany was too young. She's the oldest of them, clearly the most experienced at that point with education and whatnot, but not ready to run a, enterprise with all these moving parts, right? And so our plan was then my brother was going to buy the voting shares out of my estate. And they turned white because my brother is not the guy, right, that you want being the CEO. And so we had to strike a deal with my brother to say, would you be willing to do this for 6 years? This is a 6-year tranche, and then it could change, okay? And would you be willing to do this as a chairman but not be the CEO? You're not the right, and you know you're not the right guy. I'm having this conversation with him. I'm recruiting him to be my contingency plan. And this is how it would work, and the board would approve this, right? So we lived through that 6-year first tranche, right? We get to the second one, and as we're approaching it, my board, the Oregon Compensation Committee, my board, is saying, Ray, what's the plan for the next 6 years? Because I convinced them, let me address the next 6 years when we get closer, right? Let's live through this first 6, hopefully, and then we'll see what happens, right? So we're in year 5, and they're like, what's the next plan? And I said, Brittany. Brittany's my plan. By then, she was 5 years experience roughly at Deloitte. She had 2 really great business degrees. She was really smart, poised. She's got great values. She's got an amazing husband. Everything in her life is just like, you couldn't, script it better, except she had no board experience, 0, So I went to my family and I said, normally I would invite the family council and the governance committee of the board to form a joint committee, and then they get to veto anybody I select to be a board member. It's like the government, president, they can veto. That's the power they have. I said, I'll tee them up, and if you don't like them or love them, you just say no. And when I tee them up, I'll let them know that no could be the answer. And then you get to ultimately decide who the board members are. That's how I ushered in the change to bring in professional board members originally. And so this time I went to the board, or to the family council and the governance committee and said, I'm not asking you to approve my next selection. I'm asking you to support me on this. And here's why. Because we need Brittany to be ready. I need to recruit her in. I wouldn't want her to go to her first board meeting as a new controlling owner and meet the board for the first time and sit at the table. So hopefully that never comes to play, but it could. So would you be willing to let Brittany come in as the next generation family board member so she can study, learn, and contribute earlier versus later? If the best case scenario is I get to live a long, happy life, she'll get to have a long, happy experience being a board member. And then the deal with Brittany was, you're my 6-year plan. Could change after 6 years. Are you willing to take that? You willing to play that, because something could happen to her, right? Her life scenario could change. She's got younger siblings. We don't know what they're going to be. At that time, we didn't know she was interested in the business. But she could sure chair it. She could govern it. And eventually, she could be the controlling owner of it. So let's just prepare her for that role. So she didn't mention any of that, but that was really the reason. And so when I went out to the family and I said, I'd like Brittany to be my contingency plan. If I get hit by the bus, controlling shares aren't going to my wife. They're not going to my brother. They're going to my daughter. And instead of a nice wander at the helm as a controlling owner, it's going to be a Shannon. Now, that's kind of weird too, right? So are you okay with that? And, and they were so excited. They just loved the idea that, it makes me look like I'm with it because we got a female woman, yay. We just got the best person in the next generation that was ready, willing, and able at the time. And, she's now in her second tranche, or approaching her second one, right? When I turn 64, we're going to re-up her for another 6 years. And I told her and the family that by the time I hit 70, whatever the plan is the plan, right? And I just can't imagine it not being Brittany. And her brothers are good with it. The family thinks it's amazing. They love it. Board loves her because she's a contributor. So there's a really a significant background to that beyond what she relayed. But we don't talk about this publicly so much, right? So we just tell everybody we have a plan. If I get hit by the bus, maybe 2 days of mourning and then get on with it, right? It'll be fine. Everybody's going to be good. So I'm just really feel blessed and fortunate that we have a Brittany in our family and that we have an RJ. RJ is being groomed for the CEO track because Brittany doesn't want that. She wants to be diligent about being a homemaker and a business leader. And the chair is the direction that she asked to be considered for, right? And RJ is going to be, I don't know if you've seen the new commercials about you can't use the rock star thing if you're not a rock star. Have you seen that? It's brilliant, I think. But he's a rock star, right? He's gonna be awesome.
Awesome. Well, I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to open it up for you all. What questions might you have for Ray? Or thoughts?
Ray, could you just give a little, like, how many employees do you have and your sales, if you're willing to share that? Because we don't quite understand the scope of your business.
So we have 3 manufacturing companies, right?
Right.
We got a wholesale group, and so we've got a little over 2,000-ish employees, something like that. We're not $1 billion yet, but I think I'll live to see it. We're going to be knocking on the door of $1 billion of top line. We have an amazing strategic plan. It's broken down into 3 parts. The Raynor part is we call transformation, total company transformation. We're reinventing Raynor. That 600,000 square foot plant that Brittany was showing was part of that. Our Canadian company, Richards Wilcox, it's our incremental growth. It's a great company, hitting on all cylinders, and it's blocking and tackling and incremental growth. And our Pro Door company is our aggressive, fast growth company. It's growing like crazy. And we see that's what's going to get us to $1 billion, probably, if not by, it's in the 5-year plan to be $1 billion. So we're growing pretty fast. Brittany hit on COVID was weirdly good for us. Hyperinflation in our world, in the garage door world, in building products world, and we're the benefactors of that. I mean, margins went right along with that hyperinflation, and so the business is just been crazy good, top line and bottom line, which the thing that I love about that is we're investing in the business like we've never invested before. And that's what energizes me. That's why it's super fun to get up in the morning, is not just all this family business, but we got stuff to get done and lots of investment, and everybody's just really energized in our world. Does that answer your question? And then 75 shareholders, right? And a lot of times people think, wow, how do you manage that? I would tell you it's a lot harder to manage 8 shareholders than it is 75. If you're a let's say you're the current generation ownership and you've got the next gen and there's only 8 of you total. Every dollar is meaningful, right? I mean, you got an 1/8 share of an enterprise, if you think about the ownership, you might want to be involved in decisions, right? Or you might be real critical about the decisions that are being made for you by your board and your management team. When you have 75, half of them own less than 1%, half of them own less than 0.1%. They're just glad to be along for the ride. They love the legacy. They love the success. They love their small role in being part of it. They love the family reunions. They love the shareholder orientation. All those things, by the way, built around best practices. We said, what's the best way to engage shareholders? We went down a rabbit hole to study that. When we came to onboarding, we went down, I had the opportunity to onboard RJ before the chance to onboard Brittany. As she mentioned, I recruited him earlier because he was ready, willing, and able earlier. And so I went to the Family Business Center and I said, how do you onboard? How do you bring in a next generation? What are the best practices? Because I've never done it before, and I'm not going to pretend I know how to do this or do it well. I could wing it. But what's the data say? What's the research say? How do you do this? And I went through the process. I was going to write a white paper on bringing in next gen, got all the research, and there's a slide, I think, for this. If we could fast forward, I'll show you this one. This is kind of fun. And Sally wanted me to hit on this. What I learned was that education background of your next gen folks, Brittany's stellar, way better than my education background. She's Notre Dame Mendoza, but #1 business, Booth and Kellogg and all that good, happy stuff. But it is not a predictor of future success for a family member. It is not an indicator of future success of a family member in your family business. It's not correlated. Data shows it, right? Previous job experience is not correlated to the next family member's success in your family business. When we interview for any position, what are we looking at? We're looking at education background, previous job experience. In the family world, those are not good predictors of future success for that family member. And it's like, okay, then what is? What is? It's all about onboarding. It's how you bring them in. Now, obviously, they got to be smart and educated. And obviously, we think they got to have good background too, right? But that's not what is an indicator of their success in the future is the onboarding. So then I had to ask the question, well, what does excellent onboarding look like? Because I'm not an expert in that either. We got nothing on being, we would never say we're great at that either. So went down another rabbit hole to say, let's go find out what best practices show about onboarding. And I have this, I'll show you this. This is free for the taking as well. So all of my research on onboarding, resulted in this document. We call it the Next Gen Management Development Program. And it's the keys for excellent onboarding for a family member coming into your family business. With my dad, there was no plan with my grandfather. With me, it's just throw it to the wolves, right? We really tried hard to onboard RJ and Brittany in the best possible way and through this document. And so this has all the parts, and it'd take an hour to explain it, but I will tell you the one big surprise that I learned in putting this together was the last piece of it. And it's the one thing that we don't like to contemplate when we're onboarding a family member, and that is, what happens if it doesn't work? That's the elephant in the room, right? What if they hate it? What if they're not good at it? What if they're incompetent? What if they lie, cheat, or steal? Or they have a drug issue, or they, whatever. It could be anything, right? Or what if they just don't like the company? What if they want to leave? They don't like the company. They don't like the culture. They don't like whatever. So you have to plan an exit strategy as part of your onboarding strategy, weirdly, right? And I found that there was a lot written about exit strategy, but there was nothing. I found nothing on how do you do it. What's it look like? So we blazed our own trail on that piece. I don't know if it's a best practice or not, but we, through asking a lot of questions and a lot of opinions, and she talks about being generous, or when you say goodbye to a family member, leaving your business, you sure hope they still have Christmas or Thanksgiving, or you still hope to have visitation rights for your grandchildren, right? I've seen it go upside down where that didn't happen, right? So, you can do, I have a saying that if you're responsible for hiring people, we ask you to hire really well, be really good at it, work hard at it. But that also makes you responsible for firing people. And you also need to be good at that. And you need to do it in the right way. And here's how you do it, right? And so we created I probably put more time and attention on the possibility of exit than I did as much as the whole onboarding side of things. And so happy to share that with you if anybody's interested.
Thank you. I'm sure there will be interest. I have several questions, so I'm going to ask at least one of mine. You had talked with me on the phone about in 2008, it was nasty in many different ways. And you chose a whole different path than your father and how to kind of treat the shareholders. It sounded like you did a lot of negotiating and little step by step. You talked about what you did at Thanksgiving that one year. Talk a little bit about that.
So Sally's baiting me a little bit here because, the Great Recession was as bad for our business as COVID has been weirdly good. I mean, the recession of '08 for us, lasted till like 14 even. It was 5 or 6 years. It aged me 20 years navigating through that recession. And one story, I'll try to be brief. We're in the boardroom and business was terrible. We weren't making great money. We had 1 year where we had negative EBITDA, first time in the history under my watch, right? We weren't paying dividends. We'd slashed management salaries. We stopped paying, contributions to our 401k plans, and there was no bonuses. So effectively, my comp was like 30% of a normal year, or what would have been normal. And the management is all suffering, and we're suffering equally. And I lost one person through that whole thing out of about 20 key managers between executive level, C-suite, VP, and director. I lost one. They hung in there with us because they were on the bus and we were pulling and we were going to get through it, and eventually we did. But what happened was we went to the family council and we asked the question, we're not paying dividends. That's off the table. We're a business first, family business. So on one end of the spectrum, you can be a family first, family business. On the other, John Ward did a crazy cool research on that. So we're going to take care of the business. So our question is, should there then be no redemption of stock from shareholders? Should we not have a pool of money for shareholders for a redemption liquidity policy, right? And my dad's point of view, and he was used to being in charge, right? My dad's point of view was, we have to have liquidity for shareholders. Shit happens. If the foundation cracks and they need 20 grand to fix a foundation, or they have a car accident, or little Johnny needs to go to college, or whatever it is, sometimes they need to sell stock and they need liquidity, and I get the phone calls, right? So we have to have liquidity. The family council came back very clear, no dividend, no liquidity. If we don't have money to pay, everyone pro rata a dividend, we're not going to have shareholders coming in dipping into the well and getting cash for stock, right? And my dad fundamentally disagreed with the family council. So here we are in the boardroom duking it out. And it was the first time in the history of our company with professional directors at the table that my dad got outvoted on a board decision. And so he said, he who makes the motion, he or she who makes the motion usually wins. So my dad makes the motion. I submit we have $500,000 for liquidity, blah, 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 blah. We take it to a vote, count the votes up. The independent directors sided with the family council as opposed to the chairman, right? Voted it down. And my dad looks at me and he says, Ray, what just happened? I said, Dad, the motion didn't pass. He says, well, what does that mean? It's like, no liquidity. He says, oh, that's bullshit. He said, let's do it again. So he says, you guys obviously didn't understand what I was trying to say earlier. We should have liquidity for these reasons. I make another motion. Let's do this again. We did it again. He got voted down again. And he was not happy, okay? So we have a tradition. We go to the bar after our meetings and we debrief and review. And using several expletives that I won't repeat, he said in so many words, so Ray, how do you like your independent board now? They just voted against us. Because I'm obviously voting with my dad, and I thought liquidity was a good idea. I said, Dad, we made a good decision today. It's not the decision we would have made, but I think we just got to let it breathe and let it have a chance to see what happens, and it's what the family wanted. So let's try it. We don't always have to have our way. You don't always win these things. Let's give the process, the process was good. Let's give it a chance. And it was good, and it worked out. So that was a really cool way of getting through. The other thing that we did, I think to Sally's point, during the 08, I had one of my shareholders, a family council member, he said, Ray, we've got no dividends, but can't we show the shareholders some love somehow, some way? What if we did something at Thanksgiving? I'm like, what are you thinking? What do you got? He says, how about just a token, $250, little Thanksgiving card, let's celebrate, be grateful for family during Thanksgiving kind of theme. I'm like, I love that idea. Thanks. That's a great idea. Let's try it. So that year we had our marketing department create a Thanksgiving card. We put our family prayer on it that we use before every board meeting, before every shareholder meeting, any family function. We put a nice little, we love family and we're grateful for family, and this is a time to reflect on that gratitude. And then we put a little gift card in there for, I think the original one was like $200. Happy Thanksgiving. And it was like they won the lottery, okay? It was so appreciated, this small token, and it just reinforces, treating your shareholders like they own the place and respecting them and appreciating them in the small ways and the big ways. We also, Brittany mentioned it, and I think probably went over, you might not have got this, we invented a term we call heir apparent shareholders. Did you hear that term she used in there? It's treating our family members like shareholders before they become shareholders. If they're heir apparents, if we think they could become shareholders because they're lineal descendants and their family members and they qualify to become a shareholder, let's treat them like shareholders now. Let's invite them to the shareholder orientations. Let's send them that gift card. Let's invite them to the family reunion. For the cost of that, it's kind of grooming. We're grooming them to be future shareholders, whether they become that or not. And we term that heir apparent shareholders. They love it. They get these. I spent, because I'm on the road all the way to Thanksgiving, so I had to get all my Thanksgiving notes out before I came here. We have 75 shareholders. I have like 128 heir apparent plus shareholder Thanksgiving cards that I just finished signing, that they can go out next week or the week after. So that's the kind of innovative things that we do to just try to make sure that we're anticipating what's next with shareholders. And it was just a kind little gesture that we did with our shareholders when times were really, really hard.
And that had a profound impact.
It did have an impact.
Yeah. So another question, unless I see another hand up. Okay, we'll go to I'll Save Mine. Billy?
Ray, thanks for coming. I've heard you talk about this for a long time, which is why I thought this would be a great thing for this group. Your approach to governance and succession planning has been very, very different from your dad and your grandfather. And just what was the impetus behind that, and how have you seen it impact the business and the strategic planning for the future of the company moving forward?
So I would start with this. I mean, fathers have a profound impact on their kids. I mean, dads need to be at the table with moms, in families, right? And that's our fundamental belief. They're just so important. And, dads can be they can also be damaging to their kids. They can leave a lot of baggage or a lot of stuff in the wake. So my grandfather, our business founder, was a great entrepreneur. He was a great business leader. He had partners, and I mean, when he died, he's got 6 children, those 6 branches. Hundreds and hundreds of people came to his funeral in Springfield, Illinois, in our state capital. And his kids are standing there dumbfounded, like, who cares about our dad? He's a tyrant. He's not a good guy. Why do all these people love him so much? They truly loved him. He was just not good at being a dad, right? And that was my dad's that's what my dad learned from, right? And I always, when I'm coaching sons, next generation young men, about their relationship with their father and the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's like, listen, they don't always get it right, okay? I give my dad a lot of leeway, a lot of slack, because he didn't have best situation either, right? In fact, I would propose I had it 10 times better than he did. That's my, I think truly that as difficult as some of the things were with my father and our business and our relationship, it was way, way, way better than he had it. If you take that mindset and say, now the challenge is you just be better than your dad. Try to do it better. Learn from that. And so what I would tell you generationally is the reason first generation has it difficult is it's so hard. Statistically, if you follow the data, how many businesses don't survive in the second generation? And the myth is because the second generation screws them up, which is not true, okay? The fact is, the data shows, is that the second generation doesn't know how to manage it as a sibling team, and they give up and they sell it while they got something to sell. I mean, most of these businesses get sold by second generation before they screw them up. And they say that this is the way we can maximize value for the shareholders because we're not capable of this. Whether they say that or, they may not articulate it that way, but that's kind of the reality. If you're lucky enough, as we were, to survive through that, okay, it was hard, but we stuck with it. You have now, as a second generation, my father's generation, he had something he could point to and learn from. And I was at his side saying, Dad, we got to communicate. You got to tell your family. You got to say what's going on. If I'm going to be the next generation controlling owner, I'd rather you tell them that while you're alive than learn it once you're gone and I got to tell them, right? So we got to be more transparent. We got to communicate. We got to do better. Can we just please do better than the last one? And I'll work with the shareholders. We're going to work really hard to try to get more unity and harmony. I love the fact that Brittany used those same words because we've been preaching this for a long time. So let's just be better. And then my goal is to be that better again. I truly want to be better. So my grandfather died with all the titles. My dad died with controlling owner and chairman of the board. He gave up CEO and president. I honestly didn't think that was ever going to happen, and that was because of outside director influence and gave him the confidence that it was okay to let go of that. My hope and prayer is that I've already let go of president. I'm going to let go of CEO in 2 years, at age 64. I'm letting go of CEO at age 70. Chairman of the board at age 70. I'm giving up controlling ownership during my lifetime at age 76. Pushing it all out. Now, I will have a contract, a management consulting contract. I learned that from my PVS mentors, right? So you can let go and still, have a deal, right? You just don't have to control and own, right? So I hope I live long enough that I can give everything up one at a time and push it all to the next generation. So Brittany is already feeling the pressure of what it means to be, she'll be the matriarch. She'll be the next generation controlling owner. And she's already asking questions like, Dad, would we ever sell? Or how do I know if I should ever sell the business? Well, you and your generation have to figure that out, but here's what I would tell you. Boom, 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 right? So the goal is, let's just try to do better from the generation before. And you've got lots of case study to look at, lots of data, lots of, examples. You've got your own lived example. If you are second or third or fourth, I think we've got some fifth generation in the house. You've got a lot of peers that you can learn from. Great family business centers that are providing programs for you to think about and get your head around all that kind of stuff. So that's been. I've been a student of family business as much as I've been a garage door, manufacturing guy, and I just love the idea of the perpetuating the family business. I don't want to sell our business. I'd much rather push it down to the next generation and let them have their swing at it. And if they decide to do something different, God bless them. It won't be my decision then. And I'll just be the old guy in the room telling them about the good old days. It won't be 2008 to 2014. It'll be like 2019 to current and hopefully beyond.
That is beautiful. I think I wish.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. There was another hand. I think we have time for another quick question. Was there a hand that I missed? Ron?
I was just curious, you have a lot of shareholders. Can you give a little more detail on how they get in, how they get out, and how do you, who's allowed to get in, I guess?
So, by the grace of God, this is a small miracle that occurred in our family. We were a C Corp originally. We converted to an S Corp, I think in 2004 maybe, or 5, something like that, so that we could push distributions to shareholders without the double taxation, all that good stuff, right? So made perfect sense for us to become an S Corp. So we had the idea, let's see if we can get a shareholder agreement at the same time. In order to get a shareholder agreement then, you had to have 100% participation agreement. One shareholder could block the whole idea of a shareholder agreement, and we got it done. So it's officially referred to as a stock transfer restriction agreement, but it's a shareholder agreement. So in our world, our shareholder, the first definition you have to figure out is what is your definition of family? What does that mean? Okay, our definition is any lineal descendant of our grandfather, any of their spouses are full family members, and any of their adopted children. So an adoptee is a full-fledged family member like a lineal descendant. That's our definition of family. So you got to get your head around that first, right? So every wife could be a shareholder. They're eligible. If you divorce, the non-lineal descendant spouse can continue to be a shareholder until that spouse decides to join somebody else's family, right? Male or female. If you decide to remarry into another family, then there's a forced, sale of their stock presumably to the company. They could sell it to their heirs or the family members. And so we had 6 branches. We're a Catholic family, so we're wildly reproductive. So we have 6 branches. My grandfather had 28 grandchildren, my generation. So it went from the original 6 plus spouses to 28 plus spouses to God knows how many, 4th generation, and now I have a hard time. The family council spends a big part of their time just keeping up with the ever-expanding family, right? So all of them are eligible as lineal descendants or spouses to be current or future shareholders, which is why we created this heir-apparent shareholder thing. And that kicks in at age 18. So at age 18, if we have a family reunion, they get an invite. They get a stipend to attend. They get the hotel rooms. They get all the cool stuff, right? They get all the swag that we have. They get treated like full family shareholders, even if they're not a shareholder. So we have a lot of bitsy, small bit shareholders, but we treat them like they own the place. They call, and my management team is trained. A shareholder calls, that's your top priority. Whatever you got going on, the shareholder calls, take care of that first. They own the place. Think of it that way. They own the place. So please help me keep unity and harmony. It's in their job description. They play an assist role for me to help keep my family, really happy. They take it seriously.
Thank you, Ray. We're gonna... Well, I'd like to just say we've had quite an evening. We've heard thought leadership from a seasoned board director in Dave, and who will continue to share from his leadership scar tissue. We've heard from Ray, a G3 CEO with many other roles. You can hear how passionate he is and what a learner he is. And then we heard from a star G4 rising star and steward, and I'm going to be really interested to see where Brittany goes. So I also want to name reality, that family business is hard work. You might not have heard that, but you guys know that. You live it. There's often family assumptions and unclear expectations, and you've been through it. It's a roller coaster, and it can really harm business or family relationships, and it can lead to businesses that don't have clear leadership or accountability. So governance does not just happen. It takes intentionality, curiosity, what you've seen Ray display tonight and what many of you are doing. And Most of all, though, I think it takes really the courage and the commitment to lean into really awkward conversations that you'd rather put off. So that's the kind of work that we do and have been doing with hundreds of families like you, and for 35 years, so you are not alone on the journey, and experience matters, and we're here for you. So 2 other points. You might have already received an email from Jen. We would really appreciate just brief feedback on tonight so we can continue to serve you well. And it's not too early to register for our next forum. It's a dinner, March 21. Jody Berg is the former G3 CEO of Vitamix. If you don't have a Vitamix, put it on your Christmas list. They're the blenders. They're amazing. And she will have lots of good things to share as well. So thanks again, Dave and Ray and Brittany and each of you for who contributed to the learning, and have a happy Thanksgiving.